Hello, my name is Michael Godfrey, and in this demo we'll be demonstrating Azure Virtual Desktop running on an Azure Stack HCI cluster. So first we're going to jump into the portal. So as we discussed in the presentation, we need to deploy out our host pool, just like we would normally do in a normal Azure Virtual Desktop deployment natively on Azure. So here you'll see I have two host pools, one called Orlando, Azure Virtual Desktop. This is an empty host pool that I deployed, and then I registered my session host to. So this host pool and all the management that you're used to with Azure Virtual Desktop is exactly the same process. The only difference is my session hosts are not Azure virtual machines. They're Hyper-V virtual machines living on my Azure Stack HCI cluster. So I could see that I'm using pooled, I have different tags associated with it, and I could see even information about the application groups and the availability of my session host virtual machines. This is where I could apply things like management of the session host. So we could see I have my one single session host, and we can start to manage it. We can see that it's check-in through the broker agent. The users that are on it, right now it's empty. I can enable drain mode, and I can even send the notify or log off messages to my users on that session host. Deploying application groups or MSIX packages remains the exact same process as if you were to do it in Azure Virtual Desktop. And in my case, if I want to deploy out an application group, I can do so by using the host pool and the assignments that I want to do. So let's go ahead and quickly create one. All right, we'll create a remote application group, give it some applications. So in our case, we'll pull from the start menu and let's publish PowerPoint. So in our case, we want our users to have PowerPoint available as a remote application. We'll process some assignments. We'll do our WVD users, assign it to our workspace, maybe we want to enable diagnostics and send that to a log analytics workspace for further review, and so forth and so on. So the process should be very familiar to you because this is exactly, as I mentioned, the same process as it is for Azure Virtual Desktop. The difference is my session host lives on an HCI cluster that is in my data center. So for my users, the experience is the same, right? And as a user, I see that I have two different workspaces. In this case, I have that Orlando HCI, and then I have my native Azure one. We just published that application group, so we just need to do a quick refresh, and we should see PowerPoint now show up. Give that a second. And there we go. PowerPoint has now been published. I'm going to go ahead and go directly to the desktop and show you what that experience looks like for the user. So when I initiate a connection to the desktop, what's happening is it's just the same as if I was to connect to an Azure virtual machine. The process is sending me through the Azure front door services, through the Microsoft controlled broker servers, and connecting me just like I normally would. The difference is I do have RDP short path enabled. So what that means is now that my user is connected and they're on a network that can establish a UDP connection, they will be transferred to that UDP connection on that. And so you can see that right here. You can see that we are actually connected over UDP and our round trip time is 2 milliseconds and we have 31 megabits of available bandwidth. So the experience is much better for this user. And as you see, my profile loaded up, FS Logic's loaded up onto this machine. And so if we go to disk management, we'll see that my user profile, my VHD, has been mounted up as well to this machine. Now that profile is coming from an SMB file share. So normally with Azure Virtual Desktop native in Azure, I would use something like Azure Files or NetApp Files. In this case, I'm using a scale-out file server. And we can see it's got my user profile drives, just like I would expect in FS Logics on Azure files or NetApp files. But in this case, it's hosted on an SMB file share as a Windows scale-out file server. So that's the main difference, is my user profiles are not stored on Azure files, and the session hosts themselves are running as Azure virtual machines. Now, what does that really mean for management? So what that means for management is I need to use tools like Windows Admin Center. So because this is running on HCI, I have to manage the infrastructure. So the virtual machines, the compute, the storage, and the networking is now my responsibility to run on an HCI cluster. So I would use tools like Windows Admin Center or PowerShell or Virtual Machine Manager to manage my HCI cluster. This means that my session host is a virtual machine, just like any other virtual machine in my Hyper-V environment. The difference is this virtual machine is registered to the Azure Virtual Desktop service, so that it can connect through the broker and allow my users to connect from anywhere in the world without a VPN through the Azure Front Door services to my HCI workloads, my session host running on HCI, or to session host running as native Azure Virtual Desktops. So in this case, this is my session host. This is that VM. We can see information about that VM. We can live migrate that VM. We can clone it. We can replicate it using Azure Site Recovery if we would like to create a BCDR scenario for this machine. Or we can add more memory to it and things like that. So the management of the individual virtual machine becomes a little bit different. It also means that when I need to scale out more virtual machines, I do that through normal Hyper-V processes, whether I use manual processes like creating a virtual machine or automated processes like SCCM, Virtual Machine Manager template deployments, etc., etc. So this is a combination of traditional infrastructure management of Hyper-V with the power of Azure Virtual Desktop linked to virtual machines that you own and maintain. Hopefully this demo was really useful to you, and if you would like to learn more about this, please reach out and be happy to show you some more. Thank you.